I'm the king of the world! A lot of people ask me, what's the best advice to someone who wants to be a director? And the answer I give is very simple. Be a director. Pick up a camera, shoot something, no matter how small, no matter how cheesy, no matter whether your friends and your sister star in it, put your name on it as director. Now you're a director. Everything after that, you're just negotiating your budget and your fee. So it's a state of mind, is really the point. Once you commit yourself to do it, then the hard part starts.
And background and action!
Danny? Danny boy? Describe what Marcellus Wallace looks like.
Come with me if you want to live. I'll be back.
I grew up on a steady diet of science fiction, and my love of science fiction actually seemed to be mirrored in the world around me, because what was happening, this was in the late 60s, we were going to the moon, we were exploring the deep oceans. Jacques Cousteau was coming into our living rooms with his amazing specials that showed us animals and places in a wondrous world that we could never really have previously imagined. But when I chose a career as an adult, it was filmmaking. I sort of proved myself as a production designer in this scrappy, stay up all night for 15 days in a row kind of independent filmmaking that was done at Roger Corman's place. This was in the early 80s. And when they see that you have the creativity and the stamina and that you basically understand filmmaking, it's not a ridiculous leap in that environment to say, I now want to try my hand, I want to direct. I was hired to direct a film called Piranha 2. I was hired by a very unscrupulous producer who worked out of Italy, and he put me with an Italian crew who spoke no English, even though I was assured that they would all speak English. And I was put into an untenable situation and fired a couple of weeks into the shoot. So here's a case where everyone around me had basically said, you stink, you suck, you don't know what you're doing. And I accepted it. But then a little voice kept saying, I don't think so. I don't think it could be that bad. You have to find a key into the heart of the audience, which means you have to find universals of human experience and then express them in exotic new ways. I know what I've tried to do, which is tell stories that excite the imagination and maybe say something at a thematic level. Something about the human condition with respect to our human relationship with technology, because ultimately I think all my stories have been about that to one degree or another. I mean, these movies aren't really about Terminators. We don't really care about robots from the future. I think we all acknowledge that that's a pretty far-fetched situation. But how we become dehumanized every day, whether it's police, psychiatrists, medical caregivers, soldiers, all the different ways that we become dehumanized and discount each other, even to the extent of discounting the value of another human life. I think that's where these films really live and breathe.
They're fly-bitten savages that live in a tree. All right, look around. I don't know about you, but I see a lot of trees. They can move.
It was a 3-hour and 15-minute movie, and nothing's pretty much happened except that, when he saves her here, and then they do a little spitting over the railing, he does a little drawing, they fall in love, they run around the ship, it's really nothing but character and the development of a relationship for 2 hours. Then a whole bunch of bad stuff happens, which structurally is a very strange form. It's a very strange architecture for a movie, but it worked, because the only way all that disaster stuff later meant anything to you as an audience was because you cared about them.
I will never let go, Jack.
I start to try to get to a granular level of the world, what it's like to live in that world, what it's like to be that person. I was starting from Jake and Neytiri and some of the other secondary characters, and so okay, what's their reality the day after the humans are gone? What's their reality the day the humans come back? Why did it resonate when it first came out? In all the cultures around the world, everywhere we released the film, it was #1. So it was operating across every kind of cultural boundary, because I think it was about certain universals of human experience. Some of it is that childlike wonder that you have when you're younger and you're more connected to nature and more connected to your dreams and to fantasy. It connected that way, and it didn't matter if you were in China or France or South America.
You should see your faces.
It's Arthur Clarke's law that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And so that got me very excited, and I thought, wow, this is something that needs to be embraced into the cinematic art.
Fantasy and science fiction inevitably drives you toward a requirement to do sometimes extraordinary set construction, obviously visual effects.
Stan and I became great friends, and we hit it off right away. I saw the creativity that he had at his disposal with his team. He basically sculpted and created the entire endoskeleton and all the prosthetic makeup and the puppet heads and so on. And we tried to use puppeteered heads for some of it and then transition to prosthetic makeup for other shots. We didn't have CG in those days. Today it's a no-brainer how you do that. It'd be very easy, actually. In T2, I wanted to have a worthy adversary to Arnold's Terminator, but something so unlike him that it wasn't just two robots doing, rock'em sock'em robots. I imagined this kind of liquid metal Terminator. It was kind of fun to be able to throw such a huge challenge down in front of them and say, we're going to underwrite you to write a lot of new software, stuff that people have only been talking about, and you're going to do it on this movie. These guys were twins. And we saved ourselves, we thought of it as a cost-saving technique. We'd save ourselves the cost of about 20 optical shots by casting twins. All the effects in Aliens are very crude by present standards, very simple and straightforward. We had a big budget cut, or we had some over budget. We had to save some money, and the budget for this set got cut. And Peter Lamont came up with a great idea. There's actually a mirror at the end of the set, and there's another mirror behind the camera. I think we only had 3 of those hypersleep capsules. I was very, very leery about CG. It was not an area I knew anything about. But then it said, we're now doing stuff with fluid surfaces, with some of our software that we're just developing. We might be able to show you something.
Is it alive? Seawater.
The alien mothership coming up out of the ocean, we couldn't do water back then. I mean, we did it on a very microscopic kind of eyedropper level with the pseudopod, but that took a year to do 16 shots. Back in '95, I wrote Avatar, but my company, Digital Domain, said, this isn't going to happen without a ridiculous amount of money and time. So then when it looked like the CG was beginning to mature enough that we could make Avatar if we were willing to sort of push it a little bit to the next level, then we started the film in '05. Because of the nature of this film, with this alien clan, this alien culture, we had a choice. We could do it with makeup, like it's always been done, rubber appliance makeup. It would have looked horrible and it would have been boring and it would have looked terrible. And I wasn't interested in that. If I was going to do this, I wanted to do it this way, which is with performance capture.
What are you saying, Jake? You knew this would happen?
Yes.
We basically stood up a virtual environment like a video game, and like your iPad, I was able to move around within that space and ask the actors, what do you want to do? And as we put a scene together, if I wanted to move a waterfall over there or a cliff over there, I could do it pretty quickly.
Am I attracted only to the tech? No, only as a means to an end. But that end is important to me, and that end is to show something amazing, something unseen before.
I found that all actors really want is some sense of what a writer can bring to the moment, some sense of a narrative purpose. What am I doing? What am I trying to do here? What's the scene about? And it's really pretty much that simple. I've had the opportunity to work with some really, really fine actors over time, and you learn from them as you go along. And, I started as a writer terrified of actors, and I found out right away that as a writer, I know what the character's thinking. And what does the actor want to know most above everything? What's the character thinking? What are they feeling?
You know, what's their history maybe that leads them to that particular moment? And, you know, I had to discipline myself earlier in my career to give them input that was actable, not too intellectual, not too literary, not about kind of what's going to happen 4 scenes down the line because of a choice they make right now, but to focus it on that diamond point of that moment. What are you feeling right now, and why are you feeling that?
I thought we lost them.
I think there's an equipoise between being open and not being precious on the day, and hearing the actors and letting them completely off the leash. If they're good actors and they've come prepared, and you know, I'm gonna select for people that are good and prepare. They know the lines, you know. So now it's like, what else could we do?
I could just say there, well, you would have done it already.
Don't presume to tell me what I will and will not do. You don't know me.
Well, you would have done it already.
You try to imagine that movie without Leo or Kate, it's very hard to do.
Come, Josephine, my flying machine going up. She goes, up she goes.
We choreographed the kiss in rehearsal weeks ahead of time, so we knew what we were going to do. Even down to I drew little lips on my hands here like this, and I showed them exactly, you know, who's going to lead, who's going to press in, who's going to, like a football play on lips. But they're both so analytical, they love that. I like preparation and spontaneity. I like to read through and then we'll just jump up out of the read through and we'll rehearse. I like to try to find like the key moment of a scene with the actors way in advance, so I can always protect it cinematically later, so I know where we're going. But then on the day of, I really like to give them a lot of freedom to explore and try different things. Actors love that. They love to be able to go in all the way, but it's up to the director to create that portal for them so that they know who the character is and all that. And it's always especially hard when you're in a fantastic environment that they've never been in. I've been in the filmmaking game for about 40 years, and I started off with film and with all real sets and real tricks and all in camera and all that sort of thing, and made an aesthetic and a discipline out of that. What I found to be effective, certainly on Terminator, was to do a slow motion build-up or to subtly segue into slow motion where you almost don't realize it and it becomes almost a dreamlike pace or that dilation of time that you experience when you're in a traffic accident and it's happening and you can't stop it and time seems to stretch. For me, the fun in that scene was the build-up, the latent tension of what is going to happen, knowing that one guy's armed, the other guy's armed, they're lurking around through the crowds and all hell's going to break loose.
Mark.
All these shots during the descent, it's just me grabbing the back of the magazine of the camera and shaking the hell out of it. The poor camera operator had a bruise around his eye, because sometimes I'd kind of whack the magazine too, just to give it a sharp jolt.
I had like half an hour to shoot this scene before the sun set, so it's all shot with 3 cameras on zoom lenses on tracks, and it's all shot simultaneously. It's like a single 3-camera setup. And it was all done right at magic hour, and we shot the whole scene in about 15 minutes. We're shooting at 36 frames a second, which is slight slow motion, and Robert is walking really, really fast. But it comes back to a kind of normal gait, but it has more power. It's like every foot is coming down like a piston. And that's how we got that strange look on him. Well, what do we want to do with a movie like Avatar or the sequels? We want to take you to Pandora. We want you to live it, breathe it. You got 2 big things going on in this film. One is 3D. The other one is performance capture. And they're kind of unrelated subjects, except they're both in the same movie. So let me talk about the 3D first. You got the Fusion camera system, which took us 7 years to develop before we started working on Avatar. And then we completely revolutionized internally our stuff, and we went from a parallel system to a beam splitter system, which, if you know how stereoscopic cameras work, you shoot into a beam splitter so that you can get an interocular distance between the kind of the 2 lenses that's less than the diameter of the Performance capture stuff is very specific to Avatar. We decided to take a completely different approach, which was to create a head rig. The idea was that we would photograph the face 100% of the time while the actor worked, but not just a close-up sort of from a camera off somewhere, but locked to the head so that it was essentially nulled out, so that that data could be put into the computer, and then rates of change and edges and so on, optical flow, could be used to track all the features of the face.
What is this? Tonawari? What is this?
You do the performance capture, you don't have any shots yet. All you got is a bunch of performances. You still have to edit those performances in great detail, and it takes months to build the scene files, what we call loads, for the camera process, for the virtual camera process. So then the actors have all gone on to other shows or on vacation, and then I'm using my virtual camera to actually start to do the coverage, the shots, which are from those scene files that the editors have put together.
I'm not sure I ever want to feel that we've arrived technologically. I always want to feel there's something we can do better.
Well, I always saw the deep ocean as kind of inner space, as having the same appeal as outer space, having that same kind of remote frontier, dangerous, not for the faint of heart, the blackness, the fact that the sun doesn't reach there. You have to use high technology and trust it to get down there.
There's no such thing as an easy shot underwater. Of course, I've always felt there's no such thing as an easy shot, but underwater, multiply that by 1,000. I mean, I sort of reached a point when I made Titanic where I was making the movie because I wanted to dive to the wreck. I'd done thousands of hours underwater by then on scuba, but I hadn't done anything with submersibles. So I wanted to go do something for real with deep diving. And then so Titanic was a way of kind of serving both of my greatest interests on one project. Water was the biggest problem, and that's something we knew going in. That was going to be our challenge. But we hadn't really cracked the code on how to capture underwater. We had to create a completely new system. So what we essentially wound up with was a volume for underwater and a separate volume for the air. And those two volumes, one had to sit right on top of the other with only like an inch in between. And so the computer is taking data from one volume, data from the other volume, and in real time, in a tiny fraction of a second, it's integrating all that information together and showing me on my virtual camera people coming and going. They could act up the surface just like they were swimming in the water, and they could dive in. What people call obsession or passion, for me, is just a work ethic. And I think it comes a little bit from an insecurity that I'm not good enough, that there are other people out there that I admire, that I grew up admiring, that are still making movies, and those movies are great. And, I've got to compete with these guys and these women. And, have I thought of everything? Have I thought of every detail? Is this the best the scene can be? You got to know your craft. You got to really know your craft. You got to really know film, know what the dolly grip does, know what a lens is, know how light behaves. Because whether it's film or whether it's digital or whether it's something else holographic in the future, there are aesthetics that need to be understood. So I would say study art. Study writing, because you've got to know narrative, and you've got to know image creation, and you've got to know the technology, and you've got to be on sets. You've got to roll your sleeve up and be on sets and just do the work, put in the hours.